right. The second thing that's going to happen is that because everyone doesn't have copies of the motions, the select board will read each of the motions. And typically we could refrain from that if everyone had a copy, but because we don't, we'll just, and that's a good thing. Okay.
Recording.
All right. So without ado, I'd like to call the 2026 Sunderland Annual Town Meeting to order. The first thing, I'd like everyone to rise. And we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Daniel? Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. At this time, in the town meeting, just so you know, there's really just a couple people that are absolutely have to be here. And out of those two people, there's one person that really needs to be here, and that person is the town clerk, and she's going to come up and read the consul's return.
All right. You guys ready for this? Pursuant to within warrant, I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Sunderland by posting up attested copies of the same at the town office building, the Sunderland Public Library, and the Sunderland Post Office 7 days at least before the date hereon as within directed. Frederick Laurinaitis, April 16th, 2026 at 4 p.m. Before I leave, I have to be at the meeting, but I am not the one that puts all this together. These guys do. And then one quick thing. We have had since 2018, 19, 16-year-olds work the polls. And my very last one is now a voter. And if everybody can give McAvery Burgess a round of applause, because he's out back there. There is a very low number of kids that are interested in doing that. So, hands off to him. Well done.
Thank you, Wendy. One of the honors of being on the select board is every year that you're able to review the members of your community and you're able to offer a dedication of our annual report. This year, they have an outstanding individual, and Nathaniel Waring will read that dedication. Dan will read it.
Hi, thanks. I'm Dan Murphy, and happy to read this dedication tonight. Each year, we have the opportunity to recognize an individual or group who has contributed their expertise, talents, or passion to the betterment of our community. Many groups or individuals have been recognized over the years, having served our town in ways that make Sunderland great. This year, our annual report is dedicated to Fred Laurinaitis. He's a current water commissioner, former police officer, former EMT, captain, volunteer, fireman, constable, economic Planning Commissioner and Recreation Department, and he's been a good neighbor to me too. We honor a leader whose life work is woven in the very fabric of our small town, from the high-stakes front lines as a police officer, EMT, and captain of the volunteer fire department, to the vital stewardship of our resources as water commissioner and the enrichment of our community on the recreation department, a town constable, economic planning commissioner. Fred has protected our safety, sustained our infrastructure, and championed our joy. It is rare to find an individual who has answered the call of service in so many different uniforms, yet performed each role with the same unwavering dedication to our neighbors, all with a smile on his face. I want to give a huge thank you to Fred Laurinaitis.
So because Fred's not here, I'll tell one quick story. His family, back when I was a 10-year-old, raised cucumbers. Most of us youngsters at that time, back in the early mid-'60s, would work on the cucumber picker. I can tell you that Robert and Fred, if you missed a cucumber, you would learn about it with a cucumber in the back of the head. So Fred's been training all of us for a very long time. And all of you, if you haven't, or don't know who Fred is, if you see the Sunderland Town Water Department at all hours, Monday through Sunday, that's Fred. And Sunderland Water, 2 years in a row, has had the finest water in the state. So thank you, Fred. Okay. The other, and it's a long tradition in the town, is we have a Spirit of Sunderland. And this year, Nathaniel Waring is about to make that presentation.
Thank you very much. We want to take a moment to publicly thank the members of our fire department. We often only see the flashing lights in an emergency, but your service begins long before the alarm sounds. Thank you for your bravery, for being the ones who run towards danger when others run away. Thank you for your training, for your countless hours spent away from your families to master the skills that save lives and protect our homes. And most importantly, thank you for your sacrifice. We recognize that you miss birthdays, holidays, and quiet nights away from home to ensure ours are safe. You are the heartbeat of this community, and we are eternally grateful. If any of our firefighters are here today, if you would stand up. Put you on the spot for a second.
Many years ago, the town started recognizing the members of our community who have participated, and I remember many times the moderator at the time, Bob Doobie, would struggle with this because he knew those people very well. And I know why he struggles now. So right now we've had 4 members of our community that passed that were very active. The first was Cindy Benjamin. Cindy was part of the Town History Volume 3, School Committee, Historical Commission Treasurer, Permanent Building Committee, Sunderland 275th Anniversary Committee, the Sunderland 300th Anniversary Committee as the Vice Chair. In addition, Cindy spent many years volunteering for the town that she loved so much. Cindy's heart was huge and helped many people in the town of Sunderland. Cindy Benjamin. The second who would pass is Frederick Miller. Fred was a served on the Sunderland volunteer firefighter on the fire department from 1988 to 2000. Mary Warner. Mary served on the Sunderland School Committee, the Frontier School Committee, the French King Regional Vocational School Committee, the Finance Committee, and also the Town Park Committee. And Mary also was the past holder of Sunderland's Boston Golden Cane. Mary Warner. And our last one, a gentleman by the name of Rick Roboleski. Rick was a town park trustee. For a while, he ran a barbecue place outside of the 7 O's, and Rick could make one heck of a brisket sandwich. Rick Roboleski. The town clerk said that I needed to introduce myself. It's on the paper. I'm Tom Feidenkevitz. And at this time, Nathaniel has a town, the town had voted last year, and Nathaniel Waring will read that.
In recognition that the land in Sunderland is the ancestral homeland and territory of the Pecumtuck, Niptuck, and Abenaki, and was ceded in 1672 under questionable circumstances, it is with deep regret that we acknowledge the history of colonialism that led to the dispossession of the original inhabitants from their lands through expansionism and exclusion. We acknowledge the continual presence, resilience, and perseverance of the Nipmuc, Pecumtuck, and Abenaki peoples. We offer our respect to their elders, both past and present, for the wisdom of their cultures. We also acknowledge and honor with gratitude their multi-generational stewardship of the land along the Connecticut, today known as the Connecticut River, as well as their commitment to balance and reciprocity with all creations. To those living peoples and to the Wampanoag to the east, the Mohegan and Pequot to the south, the Mohegan to the west, and the Abenaki to the north, we extend our respect and commit to learning more about their enduring relationship with the land on which we live and to taking meaningful action to support of Native nations and communities. We understand that this acknowledgement is not enough. It is just a beginning. Thank you.
We also have a second reading, and Crystal Drake Tremblay will.
Okay, resolution in favor of a nuclear weapon freeze. Whereas the world is currently in a perilous position with regard to war and nuclear weapon use. Whereas a nuclear war would be the end of life on this planet as we know it. Whereas if humanly existence was a 24-hour clock where midnight represented the apocalypse, then as of January 2025, the world was at 89 seconds to midnight. According to the bulletin of the atomic scientist, whose science and security board member Manpreet Seth declared that a slew of risks of arms racing, a loss of guardrails, possibly of further proliferation, possibly of nuclear use, are all rising at the same time. Whereas no one person should be in a position to exterminate us by the push of a button, and nuclear testing has been recently resumed. Whereas we are but one town in one state in one nation, but we are world citizens, and regional statements make a difference in state, national, and international decision-making. Letting leaders know how the populace feels in voting in a statement such as this energizes citizens to be more involved as the subject comes up in the news. Whereas on August 8th and August 9th of 1945, hundreds of thousands of human beings died, many instantly or suffered severe health consequences in the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, when the United States dropped atomic bombs. Whereas countless peoples and communities in the United States have been and continue to be grievously harmed and suffer health consequences from the development, production, and testing of nuclear weapons and uranium mining. much of which takes place around centers of current indigenous settlements. Whereas of January 2025, 9 nations, collectively in approximately 12,100 nuclear weapons in their arsenals, most of which are far more destructive than those used against the people of Japan, and the detonation of even a small number of these weapons would affect every being on the planet, causing catastrophic human and environmental consequences that would threaten human life itself. Whereas there have historically been bills in mass legislature calling for a nuclear weapons freeze and encouraging citizens' hearing throughout the state regarding replacing nuclear weapons spending with funds for sustainable energy to address the climate crisis. Be it resolved that the people of Sunderland, Massachusetts join with the people of the world in their urgent call for a nuclear weapons freeze from this day forth. That was a mouthful.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Crystal. So Wendy had earlier talked about who puts everything together, and the budget is a large portion of it, but also the additional articles that we're going to be voting on tonight. I'd like to introduce the Select Board, Nathaniel Waring, Crystal Drake Trombley, Daniel Murphy, and the Town Administrator, Rebecca Torres. The Town Clerk is Wendy Houle. And I'm pretty proud to talk that the Finance Committee in Mass is here tonight. And I'd like Valerie to step forward, and she can introduce herself and the committee.
Hi, I'm Valerie Voorhees, 140 North Main in Sunderland. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. I would like our wonderful, community-minded, hardworking, meeting-going Finance Committee to introduce themselves to you.
Hi, I'm Dylan Corpita. I live here on 51 South Main Street.
Hi, I'm Allie Dean. I live at 153 Hadley Road.
Hi, Joe Elias, 123 North Plain Road.
Hi, Aaron Kupek, 84 Old Amherst Road.
And Ian Raphael, 208 Russell Street.
So, believe it or not, we actually have a book that we run our meeting by. It's called Town Meeting Time. If you want to become a moderator, select board, or become knowledgeable of how the town meeting is supposed to run, you can go to the Sunderland Library and request a copy, and if they don't have the copy, they can get you one. But everything that we do tonight is based out of this book, Town Meeting Time. But if there are legal questions, we do have town council that's sitting in the back, and Michael will be able to help us if we need clarification. We also have, and I'd like them to stand, a few outside groups that are very important to our community. The first is the Frontier Administration. If you could rise and introduce yourself. Franklin Tech. Sunderland Elementary School. Okay, we got most of the introductions down. Once again, does everybody have a red, a yellow, and a green card? If you don't have a card, you need to raise your hand, and your neighbor will, we don't have any additional ones, so one of your neighbors could rip the card and hand it to you, one of the cards, okay? We will be using the cards to vote. Yes is green, no is red. If you have a question, the yellow. And what we're doing tonight is if you have a question or if you want to speak, we'd like you to go quay on the center microphone so there's no question about who's calling on who or what order there is. We'll just stand up and get in line. The one thing, if someone calls a question, which usually is kind of non-debatable, just to let you know, by moderator's discretion, if you are in line and waiting to talk, we will hear you. Okay? The packet does conclude the motions and information on certain agendas. When we do the budget and we'll go through each category, voters can raise a yellow card to hold the budget line, and if they wish to revisit for more additional discussion. Concerning the rules for town government or the town meeting, we're governed by town meeting time. I will explain if someone has a question about procedures. As needed, I can explain and will recognize legitimate requests for points of order. Motions will generally be made by the select board. The articles in the warrant guide are discussions, but it is motions that we will debate. Sometimes a motion will be to adopt the action contemplated. I will ask you to stop if you, and okay, so those are the motions.
Tommy, they can't hear you in the back.
What's that?
They can't hear you in the back.
Oh, that's good. But the article may be sometimes, it will be a little different. Any debate and any subsidiary motions must be within the scope of the article, that it must have a reasonable relationship to the matter being discussed. If it does not, then I may ask you to stop or may redirect you. Motions and motions to amend generally must be in writing to the town clerk for ministerial and clerical corrections. I will accept friendly amendments and we will help with the procedure. We will be going in numerical order. You may speak only when recognized by the moderator. If you want to speak, come to the microphone. If you are unable to do so, raise your hand and we will get a microphone to you. I will try to balance discussion as well as I can. Everyone has a chance to speak on a matter, but at a certain point, I want to avoid repetition. Maximum of 5 minutes on the first time to the mic, 3 minutes on the second time, and usually it would have to really be something to get you to the mic the third time. I may allow someone with new information to speak a third time, but I may limit a speaker to only 2 times. I hope we can continue to have a spirited debate and that this meeting both supports and challenges the issues that are presented. However, no personal comments, and all comments must be civil and respectful. Civil and respectful. Town meeting wants to hear your opinions, and it may not allow you to state what someone else thinks or says. It's your opinion. If comments stray beyond the limits I have noted, or if there is a disruption, I will ask you to stop. If you do not stop, you will be asked to leave. We have many local officials, and between the local officials and myself, we will try to get any questions answered. For those in the visitor section, you have no right to speak unless I recognize you to speak. If anyone wants to film the meeting, they must let me know, and I will approve the means and location of the filming. I will ask for a voice vote on motions, no shouting. If I cannot discern the results, I may ask for a show of hands with the cards. I do respect a call of the question or a motion to cut off debate, provided that anyone lined up at the mic at the time may be allowed to speak, and provide that I will reject it if I think it is premature. Similarly, if I am hearing a lot of the same comments, I may abbreviate debate on my own. There are a variety of handouts available that may help along the handouts: the annual budget, The detailed handout may be helpful when we vote on the budget. Before we get started, I want to give the Select Board members Chair an opportunity if he'd like to make any comments.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here. It makes me very happy to see how much engagement we have with this process. I know this is going to be a long process. Please, bear with us as we go through it. If you have questions, we encourage you to bring them up. This has been a very hard budget year for all of us. For those of you who've been paying attention to the process, you know that. And obviously, we have a lot to talk about today. So thank you very much for being here.
And finally, I'd like to thank John Boshin, Director of the FCAT, and his staff for recording tonight's meeting. Dogwood Audio has been hired to provide the sound systems. And with that, I think we're ready to roll. Article 1.
All right. Article 1, move that the town vote to hear the reports of the Select Board, the Sunderland School Committee, and all other town officers, boards, committees, and commissions.
I motion we move Article 1.
Second.
So we have a motion made and seconded. All of those reports are in this book. And if you don't have a copy, there are copies at the Select Board's office or in Town Hall, and/or you can find it online. And by the way, there's a lot of information in this book. Article 1. Get those cards ready. All in favor of Article 1, please hold up your green cards. Those opposed, the red cards. Declare it unanimous. All set, Councilor? Article 2.
Article 2, move that the town vote under provision General Law, Chapter 41, 108, to set the salaries and compensation of all its elected officials connected herewith for fiscal year 2027. Should I read all the salaries since they don't have copies? No.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. Assessors, Chair, $3,070 annually. Clerk, $3,070 annually. Member, $3,070 annually. Board of Health, Chair, $1,537.50 annually. Members, $1,230 annually. Moderator, $205 annually. Planning Board Chair, $1,025 annually. Clerk, $1,025 annually. Members each, $563.75 annually. Town Clerk, $64,504 annually. Select Board Chair, $3,357 annually. Vice Chair, $2,921.25 annually, and Clerk, $2,921.25 annually.
I motion we move Article 2.
Second.
No. Sorry about that. I will second that.
So we have a motion made and seconded for the salaries of the elected officials in the town of Sunderland. All those in favor? All those opposed? Declare it unanimous. Article 3.
Move that the town vote to fund the operating budgets of the town and public schools for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2026 by appropriating the sum of $11,930,312, all as set forth in the column entitled Fiscal Year 27 Override Budget Annual Town Meeting in the document entitled Town of Sunderland Fiscal Year 27 Town Meeting Budget as on file with the town clerk, and to meet said appropriation to raise the sum of $11,253,682 and transfer from one Fund Comcast PEG Access Fund the sum of $53,000 to Fund 610 WWTP Sewer Fund the sum of $477,726, and 3 certified free cash the sum of $145,904, provided, however, that approval of the column fiscal year 2027 override budget annual town meeting shall be expressly contingent upon approval by the voters at an election of a Proposition 2.5 override, allowing the town to raise the funds appropriated hereunder outside the limits established by Proposition 2.5, General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C, and further provided that should said Proposition 2.5 override question fail, the sum of $11,273,299, all as described in the column entitled Fiscal Year 27 Base Budget Annual Town Meeting in the document entitled Town of Sunderland Fiscal Year 27 Town Meeting Budget, as on file with the town clerk, shall instead be appropriated with said appropriation met by raising the sum of $10,453,682 and transferring from one fund Comcast PEG Access Fund the sum of $53,000 to Fund 610 WWTP Sewer Fund the sum of $477,726. 3. Stabilization Fund the sum of $100,000. And 4. Certified free cash the sum of $188,891, or take any vote. Oh, okay, that's it? All right, period. Thank you. Should I say 2/3? Yes. 2/3 vote, General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, transfer from the General Purpose Stabilization Fund.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion made on the article for this year's town budget. Please note that it's going to require a 2/3 vote because there's money coming out of the stabilization account. Because of coming out of stabilization, you needed a 2/3 vote on the budget. At this time, the Finance Committee Chair would like to make an opening statement.
Hi. The Sunderland Finance Committee, along with the Select Board here in Sunderland, began our budget process last year following the usual approach. We requested level service budgets and enhanced budgets from each town department. We had every other week meetings with the town departments. They shared their budget with us. There was a lot of consultation. A few months into the process, once we received figures from the schools, it became clear that we were facing significant fiscal challenges that required a more rigorous review. In response, we asked all departments to prepare reduced budget scenarios at a 5% and 20% below current year funding levels. We then worked closely with department heads and other stakeholders to evaluate these reductions line by line, applying judgment rather than across-the-board cuts. For example, the town clerk is responsible for 3 elections in the coming fiscal year, compared to 1 this year. So a 20% reduction would not have been practical or responsible. There are lots of examples of this kind of attention that we have given to our town departments and our needs. This budget, the Finance Committee believes this budget is a result of a balanced, thoughtful budget, is a result of a thoughtful, balanced budget process that maintains services at a level that our children, families, seniors, and residents can rely on, while also protecting Sunderland's long-term fiscal health. Thank you.
All set? Thank you, Valerie. So, a quick thing with the budget. We'll be going through, there's major portions, for example, general government, town buildings, police department. We'll be going through each of those. If you want additional information on those, if you could hold the card, the yellow card up, I'll note it, and we'll come back and we'll specifically talk about that portion of the budget. General government, $730,429. Would anybody like a hold on that? Without seeing a yellow card. Town buildings, $199,372. Would anybody like to discuss that? Police Department, $688,185. Would anybody like to talk about the Police Department? Fire Department, $131,470. EMS, $315,527. Inspector and Other Protection, $70,125. Highway Department, and I would just want to have an opportunity for George. Thank you for this past winter. It was not an easy winter. You guys did a remarkable job. Thank you. Their budget is $402,090. We'll come back to that. Total highway. Total health and sanitation, $83,104. We got a hold on that. We'll come back. Total library, $255,074. Total elementary school, $3,951,324. Got a hold on that. Franklin County Technical Assessment of $188,765. Frontier Assessment, $2,802,995. Out of district tuition and transportation, $45,345. Total benefit and insurance, $1,319,847. Total miscellaneous and reserve fund, $268,940. Total miscellaneous and reserve fund, or total operating budget, is $11,452,589. And we need to also put in there the total wastewater treatment budget of $477,726. Anybody want to talk about sewer? Wow, you guys are pretty dull. So we have a total budget in the town of Sunderland, $11,930,315. So we did have a couple holds. So I'd like the person that held the question on the highway department to come up to the microphone and ask the question, please. If it works, Aaron, sure.
Seems to work. I noticed that the expense line for the highway department had a significant reduction, and I would like to know what the impacts of that reduction might be on highway services.
We have George here today. Thanks, George.
The reduction for the line item for that would probably line painting would probably get cut for the year because that's gone up dramatically over the years in price. So some services will, like line painting and other tree trimming and stuff like that, will get cut for. We won't be able to do as much. things will take us a little longer. Repairs on catch basins and stuff like that will get held over till next year until we can get the money back, hopefully.
Thank you, George.
Are there any other additional questions for George? We had a hold on the total health and sanitation. Would the person that asked, Hollis?
I think if I read this right, need to explain 173%. That's my only question there. And I don't know if anyone held up for the library, but I'd like you to explain almost 50% for the Sunderland Library. So go ahead and explain those two things.
All right, so the health and sanitation, there was PFAS found at a residence, and we're required to monitor and check that situation with PFAS. It will require continuing monitoring for some time, so that's what the increase in that sanitation is. It's one right
so,
now,
so
right?
please, can you please speak in the microphone? So,
Yeah, so Hollis,
just so we just want everyone to hear, Hollis.
so it is one home that it was found in, but the testing has to encompass an area around that.
Okay. Explain the library then.
In the event that the override fails, then the library expense item will be reduced significantly. And I think that, so just to be clear, as Val explained, for all departments, even non-override, even if we pass the override, we're still having some reductions. But if the override fails, then yes, we're losing quite a lot of funding in the expense line item, and the kind of things that you will see at the library. We will not actually meet the requirements for state certification. We will have to file a waiver. That affects all the services the library gets, the CWMRs, your interlibrary loans, so hopefully we will get that waiver, but that will not be guaranteed and will become harder as the years goes on. We will be reducing materials. We will have to redirect privately donations to the materials line item, so you will see a reduction in programs like the concerts, lectures, crafts, many of the things that you have come to appreciate at the library, technology, et cetera. So, I mean, I think that 46% reduction is the consequence of a failed override.
Okay, is there any else? Any more comments? We had a, what's that? Peter?
Is it all right now to make a comment about the budget as a whole?
How about when we get to the final number? Boy, a lot of power up here, huh, Davey? Elementary. Total elementary, we had a card that was held up for total elementary.
Hi, Darius. Judy Pierce. Could you just talk about the level funding versus the override funding and the differences that will create in the elementary school for us? We've had some pretty consistent years at high percentage increases for the elementary school. Just a high level of the potential for, I'm guessing, a lost art, language, music, staff people, library services. So have I pretty much nailed it? Yeah.
Yeah, let me give an overview of where the elementary budget is. So we came in at, oh, I appreciate that. If I did that, it'll take about 10 minutes. Our needs level came in at 18%. And I know folks are going to say, like, how is it that high? How is a community this small have that size of a raise? Generally, the needs of the students in Sunderland Elementary, basically, it comes down to that we have a high-need student population. And a high-need student population identified by DESE, by the Department of Education, is those who are economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, and English language learners. Our community has a large number of those, and to put those numbers to so you can understand how it folds out, is that Sunderland's 53% high-need students. Compared to 10 years ago, you were 36% high-need students. As a comparison to your neighbors across the river, Deerfield's at 38%. So you're around almost 20% higher in high needs. And because of these high needs, there are more programming, there's more IEPs, and so forth. And this year, we've had an unprecedented number of newcomers to our town with high needs that we have to meet. And so when I talk about we have to meet by law, for those who don't follow education, when a student has an IEP or a 504 plan that we need to follow, we have to meet those under the regulations. And if we have to cut elsewhere to meet those needs, we have to under the law. And so we have already reduced our budget to get to the 10%. And what we did is we already reduced the budget by 3 instructional assistants. We currently froze the budget this year, allowing no non-needed spending, so extras for classrooms were put on hold. We used all the rural aid we could get, even though there was a reduction from the state, so keep pushing our legislators to get rural aid for us. We reduced 2 grade level teacher positions for next year by combining classrooms, so we're going to have a classroom at 25, 26. And we're rolling the dice with our kindergarten class that's around 20 right now. In years past, we've gotten more than 5 students entering kindergarten in a single year, and that's significant because the law requires us to have classes of kindergarten under 25, or else we have to split. So we're kind of rolling the dice. We're going to hope that it holds out, but this community, we have a lot of people that enroll late. We are also going to reduce physical education by 1 day. So that got us down to 10%. If we have to cut further, we would have to cut about $360,000. We would cut the school adjustment counselor, a math interventionist, another instructional assistant, and then we would have to look at specials such as art, music, and the librarian. It's just the reality. There's nowhere else to cut. After that, do we just get rid of 4th grade and send them home for the year? I mean, I'm sorry to bring levity to that, but we've already reduced things so far that would be bare bones. And I want to talk about a reality what happens if you don't fund your school, okay? Is there something called school choice? We have been beneficiaries of school choice in the 4 towns that I work with, where I'll call us winners, meaning we take in more money than we send out. If we don't provide a quality education in the eyes of our citizens, people will walk and they will go to other schools and they will take money with them. So we will write a check for every student that decides that because we can't provide some of the standard things like art and music, which I would call them standard expectations in an elementary school. They may go to Amherst. They could go to one of the others, within the union that doesn't help you. But they could, go to Hatfield. They could go somewhere else that may have this. And we will then write a check to that school. So next year I'll be here saying, well, we had to pay out this many students. And this happened 10 years ago or so when the override failed, was it 10 or 11 years ago? I wasn't in this position at the time. But we lost about a dozen or so students that went mostly to Amherst, and they never came back after we were able to bring back the budget over the next couple of years. Then they never came back to Frontier either. And so we paid out, and many of them went to charter schools. The charter schools tuition, they're around $20,000 per student going out. So we get no savings when those students leave. You can say, oh, well, if some students leave, wouldn't our budget go down? No, unless I'm going to not offer 4th grade. And if a high-need student leaves, a high-need someone on an IEP that's receiving extra services, let's say it's like speech or OT or something like that, they bill us for that as well. So it gets to this slippery slope of we really need to, and giving you all this information so you can be informed voters, and I hope you pass that on to other people, that you really do need to fund the base education of where we're at in this budget. And unfortunately, we've cut away and combined and done all the things that we can do at this point. So that's kind of an overview of where we're at, and I can certainly answer any questions within this budget or how things would move, that kind of thing. But hopefully that gives an overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Modesto. Are there any other questions on the elementary budget?
I was wondering if you could clarify school choice, because what it seems to be in the press, we get something in the order of $5,000 for a student coming in, and yet it costs us somewheres in the neighborhood of what, $20,000 to $25,000 to educate that student. So what's the percentage of students that are school choice then versus students from the community?
Excellent question. So school choice, started like in mid-90s. Basically, for any student that chooses to go to another community, that community gets $5,000 per that student. And any additional IEP or services that student receives. So let me explain that. So if I was to come to Sunderland Elementary and I had an IEP that required speech services, I would then be billed, you would bill the sending school, because I came to Sunderland Elementary, $5,000 plus the sped increment on top of that. That can get very expensive, because sped increments could go all the way up to having a one-to-one, which could be $30,000 to $40,000, so that kind of thing. So it's not just $5,000, but overall it is $5,000. So the idea is that, let's say you have 15 students in your classroom. Well, we think the sweet spot for right now is, let's say fourth grade, 18 to 20 is probably the sweet spot for that classroom. Well, we could take 3 students of choice, get that $15,000 plus any sped increments, and then be able to reduce the cost to the towns. Frontier is an extreme winner in school choice, extreme. Okay, right now Frontier has shut its doors to school choice in the middle school because it's filled, there's the amount of people that want to go there. To the point where it's paying for all of its capital projects the last few years, the track, the roof, we're going to do the parking lot over, all those things have been paid for by school choice. And the reason why we're using it to take care of capital funds is because they're non-reoccurring. So you're not inflating your budget that's going up and down with students that are coming and going. So overall, as a district, we've been doing very well at school choice, but the numbers overall have come down the last few years as the county's getting smaller, and people are choosing to leave less. The other thing on school choice is also charter schools. So charter schools, so if a child from Sunderland said, hey, I'd rather go to the Chinese immersion school in Hadley, that costs the town $21,000. Okay, so we have to bring in, for every child we bring in from another town, we get $5 a head. Charter schools get $20,000 a head. And that's just the way they do the formula. So you have to understand, so if people decide to go elsewhere and they choose charter, it's 4 times as much. And, there is some reimbursement that you get back depending on what year they go and that kind of thing. But overall, it's an expensive setup in education.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions on the elementary school budget? Seeing no hands or anybody standing up in line, we go to the grand total. And
There was a reserve on the total miscellaneous reserve. I'll let you raise your hand if you saw that.
okay, total miscellaneous and reserve fund. Somebody have a hold on that?
Hi. Just a quick question. When I attended one of the Select Board Finance Committee meetings where they discussed the senior center, and it sounded like the goal was to move to a location in Sunderland further down on Amherst Road, but I saw a recent news article that sounded like Deerfield or some folks in Deerfield were still pushing for it to be in Deerfield. So, and I had thought the matter was settled, so I just wondered if someone could clarify like where that's at and what we could expect with this if we vote for it.
Huh? Joyce, did you want to talk? So right now, typically we don't allow outsiders to speak at the town meeting. In this case, Joyce Palmer Fortune is the chair of the Board of Oversight for the Senior Center, and I believe she would be able to answer that question the best. Joyce?
Thank you very much for asking the question. The Board of Oversight has been looking into new locations for the Senior Center for, 2-3 years now. We've been doing studies. We've done a lot of work with consultants, with a group called EDM Studio, and we had them look at many, many places within the towns, including the place we are proposing in our budget, which is 112 Amherst Road. And then we also had them look at 8 Conway Street in Deerfield, which is Deerfield's current town hall. When they looked at these buildings, they said, you're going to need $8 million to renovate 8 Conway Street. We looked at it and said, 5 probably. We could probably live without some of the things they said. $5 million. So that's a building with decades of deferred maintenance that is in really rough shape. There's a reason why the Deerfield town staff are leaving the building and going into a new renovated facility. So with that context, we found the most cost-effective thing to do was to rent a building that is in really good shape, no deferred maintenance whatsoever, a place that is, I would call it an adequate senior center. It's not a luxurious senior center, it's an adequate senior center. Happens to be located in Sunderland. And I think it would help us with our growth. We are growing and growing and growing. And we can expand our services without expanding our staff, because we could use our staff more efficiently if we're all at one location. I think some people in Deerfield might have been disappointed. I guess that might come under the category of me telling you what somebody else thinks, so maybe I'll stay away from that. But there are people who are disappointed that the senior center might be in Sunderland, and they want to offer the building kind of as is, basically, with minimal maintenance, minimal renovations. And the Board of Oversight just thinks that's not a good idea for our seniors. Ultimately, that location will be more expensive because of all the repairs that are needed on the building. And those repairs are going to come from money from the 3 towns. And that is not by any means a done deal. Okay, it has not been discussed in Sunderland, it's not been discussed in Whately. Do we want to ask our taxpayers to spend the money for the deferred maintenance on a building that Deerfield will own in the end of the day? I don't know. That has just not been discussed. It was never on the Board of Oversight's plate to make that decision. But some folks in Deerfield want us to consider that, and it's kind of too late in the budget cycle for us to really consider that. What I would like you to consider is voting for this override at town meeting, and then of course it goes to your ballot box, and put it to the voters. The voters get to decide on this, okay? I don't know that there is a cheaper option out there than the one we've put forward. Our senior center is about, right now, 0.5% of your budget. And we are asking you to roughly double that. But seniors, you show up. You show up when the schools need you. You show up when the highway department needs you. You show up when everyone needs you. And here's one time when I'm asking everybody to show up for the seniors and for all the things the senior center does that helps every single senior. We are growing. We have an exponential growth rate, and we are like way past the limitations of the space we have right now. So my argument to you is, let's vote on what the Board of Oversight has put before you. We're looking at the interest of all three towns and the seniors of all three towns when we made our recommendation to rent at 112 Amherst Road with the option to buy in the future. Okay? And we were looking at really what is best for all three towns. Okay? If that fails in one of the towns, then we're back to square one and we have to consider everything. But I can tell you, we're not going to get something cheaper. We're not going to be able to get anything cheaper. Our estimates for what we would need to do at 8 Conway Street are very different from what some folks in Deerfield are proposing. So, reasonable people of Sunderland, I hope you hear me. And thank you, Tom, for letting me have a few minutes to speak.
If I could just add a couple quick things before we get to our next speaker. Just want to clarify that this has to pass tonight, and then it goes to the election, and it has to pass not only in Sunderland, but in Deerfield and Whately also. If any of those three towns vote it down, it does not happen, just so that everyone's aware of how that works. I also would want to add to one quick little thing, and that's that I was actually very surprised when we had our presentation from the Senior Center recently about how much the numbers of seniors have grown in town. And if we had the same growth in our students in town, we'd be talking about millions of more dollars for the schools in order to meet their needs. And so having a modest increase in funds for the Senior Center for this much larger population than we had even 10 years ago is a reflection of that growth, not just of the increased needs of the Senior Center itself. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Actually, Nathaniel, I'm just going to build on your comment. I didn't see the presentation. I apologize for that. If we could get some information on the total participation in the Senior Center and then the Sunderland portion of that. And then also, if I'm understanding correctly, the expenses listed in the override portion, the $175,000, I think it is that just for the rent of the building, or are there other costs baked into that number? Please.
I'm going to answer that last part first and then go backwards from there. So the override amount, the difference between the override amount and the base budget amount is the cost of the Senior Center. That's the increased cost to be able to rent the building and do all the things we need to do. So if it doesn't pass, the lower budget amount is the amount that the Senior Center would get in their current location and current setup. And then you were asking about the breakdown of the people in town. Do you have those information? I don't have them.
Yeah, it might take me more than a minute to find it, but when we went through the numbers, basically the number of people using the Senior Center was getting close to like 1,000 between the three towns. And when you broke it down town by town, it was exactly in proportion to the number of seniors in the towns. So if you took the number of all the seniors in all the towns, and then you took the number of seniors that live in Sunderland, and you get a fraction, it's about 28%. If you look at the participation in Senior Center, 28% of the people are from Sunderland. It's really eerily close to just the fraction of people from age 60 and above from the towns. I've got more detailed numbers somewhere in here, but I didn't have the screen up. So, but I'm happy to chat with anybody another time. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming up to the microphone.
Yeah, thank you for taking me out of order here. I just want to request that the moderator ask people to identify who they are and where they live. So I'm Jay Bowerman, and I live at 5 South Silver Lane in Sunderland.
Thank you, Jay. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
is Andy Mayers. I live at 62 Howard Hepburn Road. Just a technical question. Assuming we vote for the override and pass the override, but Deerfield doesn't agree to the senior center, what happens to the $53,000 in terms of...
Good question.
If we vote for the override and Deerfield doesn't vote for the senior center, what happens to the $53,000 that would be in our budget?
Yeah. So the short answer is that the money is contingent on the project going forward. And so the BOO would default to the lower budget if the three towns don't pass the money. And that money would get returned to the town in the form of free cash in the following year.
At this point, I'd like town council just to clarify that. And he'll just talk in legal terms, so you'll be able to follow easily.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Dortenzio, Town Council from KP Law. Thank you for having us here. What Nathaniel said was correct. The money would be raised and appropriated because it is within the amount in Article 3 that you are raising and appropriating. So even if the senior center does not go forward in its current form, that money will be collected from taxes. If it is not spent, as Nathaniel said, because it doesn't go forward in its current form, it will either close to free cash at the end of the year, as Nathaniel said, or it can be used by town officials within a certain number of days at the end of the fiscal year to close any overages and other line items. Those are the two items that could occur. Of course, you can also have a special town meeting in the fall once you determine what will happen, and you could move that money to some other purpose that the town wants to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Peter?
All right, my name is Peter Gagarin, 300 North Main Street. Many years ago, I was head of the Finance Committee for a number of years. I've been through many budgets. I always believed in having a relatively tight budget. I know people have to pay taxes, and keeping our spending reasonably limited was always a goal. This town has wonderful town government. We don't do it by having a huge amount of money, but every part of the government works incredibly well and efficiently to provide us the services that they do. I had a couple of people when I came into this meeting this evening that came up to me and said, Peter, can you tell us what's going on with this budget? How come it's up so much? How come the override is so much? And I pointed out maybe four things that were going on this year that are both unusual and very expensive. One is the increase that all towns are feeling in health insurance costs. Okay, and obviously a lot of individuals feeling that too. And we can say all we want about why it's happened or whose fault it is or whatever. That doesn't make any difference. We have to provide health insurance for our employees, and we have to pay what the going rate is. Second is, at the elementary school, a massive increase in the cost of special education. Special education is one of those things that the law says you have to do it, and if you've got your head on the right way, you know you have to do it. Okay, we take care of every kid that walks through that door of the elementary school. And the cost of when their special needs are so severe that we have to send them to special schools, out-of-district placement we call them, and the transportation for that, those have just skyrocketed in the last year with additional students coming on board that we have, spending over $150,000 for a single student. Okay, and again, it's the legal thing, we have to do it, and it's also, it's the right thing. It just costs a huge amount of money. Third major increase is that we have more kids going to Frontier this year, which is next year's budget allocation between the 4 towns is based on, in part, how many kids you have there. And so Frontier's budget overall increase has not been that large, but Sunderland is bearing the lion's share of it. And the fourth thing that I would pick out is our plans for a new senior center. We are very late to the game in terms of providing adequate space for a senior center. I think that everybody realizes that. But that also is a new expense. And so with each of these folks I talked to before the meeting, they walked away saying, okay, it makes sense. And then I said, can you support this in the vote? And the answer was clearly yes, because it's something we need to do. We have to vote tonight on this article here to pass that. And the sense I get from this room is that that's not going to be a problem. The vote that really is the deciding thing will be next Saturday at the ballot box. Okay, and overrides generally will pass a town meeting without too much difficulty, and it's a real challenge to get them passed at the ballot box. So I would just say that, again, going back all my years involved with town finances, it's like, how do we both offer good services but also keep budgets pretty tight? Believe it or not, the budget that's been proposed here this evening with the override amount is a tight budget. You heard Darius talk about what they've already reduced at the elementary school in order to get to this level. So I hope that you and your friends will join me and many others here in voting next Saturday to pass this. Otherwise it's not going to be pretty. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else lined up at the microphones. Are we ready to vote? So, red and green cards, put the yellow ones away. All those in favor of Article 3, hold up your green cards. Those opposed, red cards. Moderator declares 2/3 majority, article passes. Article 4.
All right, Article 4, move the town vote to transfer from Capital Stabilization Fund $357,878.22 for the fiscal year 2027 capital budget, specifically for the capital equipment, buildings, facilities, and other capital projects as shown on a document entitled FY27 Capital Budget by Funding Source, as on file with the town clerk and as may be necessary in connection therewith. And to authorize one or more tax-exempt lease purchase finance agreements pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, Section 21C, for capital equipment identified in said document for terms not to exceed the useful life of the equipment as determined by the Select Board.
Second.
So we have a motion made and seconded because everyone doesn't have the information packet. Nathaniel, could you just read quickly the items that are on the capital budget plan?
Absolutely. Our first item is for the police department, and that is public safety complex and booking room video, and that is $10,500. A new cruiser for the night shift, and that is $80,000 for a total of $90,500 for the police department. For the library, there's a remodel of the door to the reading room for $15,000. For the highway, there's a Ventrek sideway plow mower with cab for $70,000 and an asphalt roller with small tractor for $39,000 for a total of $109,000. For the South County Senior Center, there's new building furniture, a total of $18,762.92, which is our share of the total for the 3 towns. Highway Department, we have a backhoe year 6 lease, truck year 4 lease, and loader year 5 lease for $34,220.63, $40,394.67, and $50,000 even, for a total of leases of $124,615.30. The total capital stabilization projects all around are $357,878.22.
Okay, are there any questions on this article in motion? Not seeing any. Yes. You can try.
I'm Ann Nussbaum on South Main Street, and I had left a message for George during one of the snowstorms. I was coming back from work from Westfield, and for some reason, Waze took me off of 91 and set me down Route 9 and up 47. And I don't know if people realize how great our highway department is, but as soon as I got through Hadley on Route 47 and got to Sunderland, it was a completely different road. It was plowed well. It took me 45 minutes just to get off 91 and go on Route 9 and come home. And then I had to go to Deerfield, South Deerfield. The roads weren't that good in South Deerfield, which really shocked me. And Sunderland was just by far plowed so well. And I don't think our highway crew gets enough credit for all that hard work and extra time they put in. So thank you, George.
All right, are there any other questions? Yes, sir. Thank you for your comments. Talk.
Will Stillen, 34 South Main Street. I'm looking at, looks like we're spending $357,000 out of the stabilization fund, right? Is that what I'm seeing?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and then underneath it, the balance as of last month was $141,000, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so great question. We have, a couple of years ago, we passed a bunch of years ago, we passed a $125,000 stabilization override. That meant that every year we were collecting that much money for capital projects already. And then 2 or 3 years ago, I don't remember exactly how many, we passed another override for stabilization for capital to increase that amount to I think we're at $430,000 now. So the bottom number is our starting balance. We're adding $430,000 and then spending the $357,000-ish down. The reason that we're making sure we spend less than we bring in is because we know that we have some large looming projects, including the school roof on this building right here. And we're trying, the Capital Stabilization Committee is trying really hard to put ourselves in a good fiscal position for when that comes up, so we have a nest egg set aside. So with the money going out and the amount we started with, we're ending up right around $200,000 in the account for seed money for that going in the future.
Okay, are there any other questions? So, town meeting floor, according to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 21C, this requires a 2/3 vote. So get those cards ready. All those in favor, please hold up your green cards. Those opposed, please hold up a red card. Declare it unanimous. Article 5.
Move the town vote to transfer from free cash to pay any unpaid bills of previous fiscal year, specifically invoice number 2743 for a plumbing on April 3rd, 2025 for $275. Just
second.
We have a motion made and pay some old bills.
Do you mean Hollis, are you meaning to hold a yellow card, or you've, oh, got it. All right,
I think Hollis is trying to get a keep going.
I'm with you.
Are there any questions to pass? Now, because of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 64, we need a 4/5. You're stressing the moderator with the math up here, okay? So, all those in favor of this article, please hold up your green. Those opposed with the red. Declare it unanimous.
Article 6? Okay. Move that the town vote to amend the fiscal year 2025 budget by increasing the Board of Health Personnel Service line item by $5,896.33 for the purpose of correcting an administrative error in processing the payroll of the former health agent from October 21, 2024 to March 26, 2025, said sum to be transferred from certified free cash.
Second.
Okay, you have a motion made and seconded. Explanation?
We had a situation where we had transition in personnel, and the person who, the health agent had not been putting in his own timesheet. It had been done by an employee, and that employee left, and we had new employees, and another person did not manage to get the timesheets in, and we had a situation where the agent left and retired and didn't realize until almost the following year, about 9 months later, that he had not been paid for 6 months. And so we needed to rectify the situation, and I apologized. I was new. We had a lot of different transitions going on. And so we are trying to just correct an error with this payment.
Are there any questions? Dylan?
Just from a process standpoint, can we amend the fiscal year 2025 budget? Does that exist anymore? Or do we need to just pay the bill like the motion before?
I'll let council answer that. We had a conversation about it.
Thank you, Michael D'Ortenzio, Town Council. Thank you for the question. Paying bills that have already been incurred. So this is different because the bill that was in the last article was one that was received after the fiscal year, right? That's why it requires the 4/5 vote under Section 64. This was a charge that the town had already authorized in a previous fiscal year. So it's not the bill, we're paying it late, but the bill wasn't received late. The services were rendered, and we were aware that they were rendered because this was a town employee. So for that reason, in my opinion, this is a valid way to amend the budget, if a little unconventional, but it does work, and it solves the issue of making sure that the individual is paid for those hours that were worked. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Bergeron?
Scott Bergeron, 7 Old Amherst Road. I'm going to put on the hat of my esteemed colleague, Peter Gagarin, from many years ago and ask, what is the value of certified free cash? I was going to ask what the value of certified free cash is.
Oh, the total?
You probably want to know stabilization too, right? Well, if you're going to do the
All right.
Russ Crenshaw question, that's...
So our opening balances are $574,883 in free cash, $379,911 in stabilization, $141,537 in capital stabilization, $86,580 in the Comcast PEG Access Fund, $1,104,463 in the CPA Fund, and $1.266426 million in the Sewer Reserve Fund. You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? So basically, you want to pay somebody that hasn't been paid. All those in favor, please. Green cards. All those opposed, red card. Declare that unanimous. Article 7.
All right.
Okay, if we want to speed it up, people are putting their motions back on the table. So if you don't have the written motions, and if everybody gets a copy of the motions, then we can do away with reading all of these motions.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, so we'll give everyone a minute to grab them, and then we will dispense with the reading of Article 7 and move from there. But I'll give everyone a minute first. Oh, I'm looking forward to...
Not reading the AD or what?
I mean, if you guys want to listen to me read 5 pages in a row, sure. But... yeah.
Here, it's a good chocolate break time.
Sold.
Is everybody have a copy? I have one up here. What's that? Okay. We have additional ones in the back. If you need a copy. Article 7.
All right, we're going to dispense with the reading of Article 7. Article 7 is the Community Preservation Committee moving money around the various reserve funds.
So you still have to make a motion.
I move Article 7.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded. Basically, Article 7. This is the Jennifer article. And Jennifer Uncles is one of the only people in the world that understands how this stuff works. And basically, what this says is that we take in, Sunderland has a CPA of 3% that we get from the state, hopefully, and 3% from our taxes. And there are certain items, 3 locations that we have to put a certain percentage of way. And what this does is this addresses, 1, the administrative expenses for CPA, and then it also establishes the minimum contribution to each of the funding that the CPA needs to deal with. Jennifer, is that right? Basically? Okay. Is there any other questions on this article? Seeing no yellow cards. All those in favor, please signify with the green cards. Those opposed, red cards. Declare unanimous. Article 8.
I motion we move Article 8.
Second.
So Article 8 is actually Jennifer, does somebody on CPA want to talk about these articles in unison? Our chair?
Hi, my name is Megan Arquin. I'm at 206 River Road. This article is to help establish an orchard project here on the Sunderland Elementary School project that's adjacent to the community path. And the money that I'm seeking through this CPA funding is to help with the establishment and the maintenance of this project over the next 3 to 5 years, depending on its needs. And the idea is to have it be a community space, a space that community can engage with, and also for the students to learn from and to see, hopefully, it thrive and how programming through that orchard can bring community together and everybody hopefully enjoying the fruits that come from it.
Sunderland has been very fortunate with the CPA projects, and it'd be great if we could, and we do, put a pictorial thing on the walls to see how the money is used. It's amazing projects that have gone forward. Have any questions on Article 8? See no questions. All those in favor of Article 8, please. Green cards. Opposed? Red cards. We'll declare it majority yes.
Thank you.
Article 9.
I move Article 9.
Second.
Jennifer?
My name's Jennifer Uncles. I'm on North Silver Lane. I'm on the Conservation Commission as well. And this article is to move $100,000 to the Conservation Trust Fund, which has a balance of $312,020. And some of the things we've used that Conservation Trust money is to do the town match for APR land. Not too long ago, we put $50,000 toward some APR parcels up in the north part of town. There's one in process now that's almost $10,000 on Russell Street for the town match part. And there's a couple conversations happening for a conservation restriction and another parcel for some kind of protection. We're not sure what that looks like yet. So those other hopper projects will deplete that $312,000. So the $100,000 will bring it back up for projects that come up between now and next town meeting.
So basically also anytime that the town or the state wants to purchase property and or restrictions on property, the town is always asked to make some kind of contribution. So a lot of times the CPA money, it goes into the Conservation Commission and the Conservation Commission will use it in these applications to help the town purchase these restrictions and or land. Any other questions on Article 9? All those in favor of Article 9? Green. Opposed? Red. Declare it unanimous. Article 10.
All right, Article 10 is a change to the ADU laws pursuant to the changes at the state level.
Can you make the motion? You have to make the motion.
Right, sorry. I move Article 10.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. Explanation?
Yep. So the state, as I'm sure many people are aware, recently changed the laws around additional dwelling units. And once they passed that law, basically it opened up the floodgates for, without local regulation, it's sort of the Wild West on them. People can do whatever they want. Towns are encouraged to adopt individual bylaws that set our own regulations around them within the scope of the state regulations. And that's what this article is. If you want to talk, just come on up and get in line.
So, yeah. So we're going to need the planning board to give an oral presentation. And it's part of our Mass General laws that they got to talk.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Dean. I'm at 153 Hadley Road. I'm also a member of the planning board. As Nathaniel said, the state of Massachusetts updated its laws back in 2024 to allow accessory dwelling units by right under certain circumstances. And I know there was a proposed accessory dwelling unit bylaw that was made several years ago that was voted down. This is a different situation. What we're doing now is amending our zoning code, or attempting to amend the zoning code to essentially comply with the new state law that has been passed. And so the planning board worked with FERCOG, the Franklin County Regional Council of Governments, and also worked based on a model bylaw that was promulgated. And we largely followed that, that model bylaw with a couple of small exceptions that I can just point out really quickly. The first is that the way that the state law is written is that ADUs are allowed by right with a maximum size of either 900 square feet or half of the gross floor area of the primary dwelling. We've changed that slightly, and I can explain why in a second, but what we've done is we've gotten rid of the half the gross floor area portion and increased the maximum size from 900 square feet to 950 square feet. That was based on a recommendation from FERCOG and some other folks we spoke with who suggested that putting that limit too small would make these units essentially economically not feasible, just due to the cost of construction and the cost of bringing those into compliance with building and other codes, which they must comply with. The reason that we got rid of the half of the gross floor area requirement was to ease the burden on our town administrative staff. This would be administered by the building inspector, who's a single person who we share with other towns. And it's not quite as simple as just looking at the property card that is online, because the way that the state statute defines gross floor area is not just simply building area or what you would typically see as the square footage of a home in a real estate listing. It can include basements, but only if they are compliant in terms of height, and doesn't include crawl spaces. It gets a little more complicated. So we wanted to ease that administrative burden, and we also didn't believe that would have a material effect on the ability of people to build these should they choose. So I'll open the floor to comments now, and happy to answer questions if they come up.
Any questions? State your name and address, please.
Larry Reve, 60 North Plain Road. Phyllis Berman, 60 North Plain Road. The key Massachusetts requirement that a by right ADU not exceed half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or a maximum of 900 square feet, whichever is smaller, was designed to ensure the ADU remains accessory, ADU, or subordinate to the main home. This regulation ensures that the ADU does not dominate the property by keeping the ADU smaller than a primary residence. It maintains the neighborhood's character with the appearance of a lot that has a single-family home with a secondary unit rather than a duplex or a multifamily property. It limits the impact on local density and infrastructure by preventing the construction of two similarly sized homes on a single-family lot, and prevents creating essentially two-family homes, which require a different zoning law. The reasoning for this ADU regulation is sound. Several cities and towns in Massachusetts recognize the value of the size limitation and have or plan to adopt the requirements as is. Sunderland Planning Board proposes to slightly tweak the basic ADU size requirements in two ways. First, they would change the maximum square footage from 900 to 950. The reason so given tonight was economic reason given by the planning board earlier, was to facilitate the creation of fully handicapped accessible units, which tend to need slightly more space. We support that argument and sincerely wish that the extra space would actually be used for that good cause. We do very much oppose the second tweak of the basic ADU size limits. The planning board says they propose to entirely drop the clause, quote, or 1/2 the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, whichever is smaller, end quote. In order to make administration of the bylaw easier on the town staff. We're sorry that the administration of the ADU bylaws will mean more work to regulate it, but that's the job. We don't believe that a key ADU size regulation should be eliminated just to save administration efforts. Other cities and towns are capable of doing this. They can do the math on this ADU and protect from creating possible loopholes for developers to potentially capitalize on, and Sunderland should do the same. For example, there's a lot at stake here. A non-occupant landlord could build 2 similar-sized buildings on a lot, declaring the slightly smaller one to be an ADU, and then rent both of them. Further, every lot in a future development, and for all of these things, as you know, planning, you have to look to the future. A lot of future development could be treated this way, with each in the development holding 2 fairly equal houses. Other cities and towns, I said, have no trouble doing this to protect from creating these loopholes, and Sunderland should do the same. If Sunderland takes no action, ADUs are still allowed, it's state law. In fact, there's 2 ADUs in town in process right now. But we can't ignore the danger of passing this proposed article as is and of losing the protection of that half-size gross floor area safeguard.
Larry, can you sum it up, please?
Here's the summation, unless the amendment restores this requirement, proposed law, the article should not pass. And we have proposed language to put it back in. Thank you.
We proposed some language for...
So we can, please begin.
I wish I could. I'm sorry. Again, I'm going to reiterate what he said. If this doesn't pass, and we think it should be taken back and rewritten to include the phrases that he was talking about, you're still going to be able to have the ADUs in Sunderland. And in fact, like North Plain Road right now has one that's in progress. It follows the exact state regulations, and there was absolutely no administrative problems with it. There's another one on Montague Road. Again, it's the same building person, and they had no trouble whatsoever following the regulations, which they do in Granby and Amherst and Leverett, and all of those towns have accepted the regulations the way they are. So we have proposed that we would find Article 10 acceptable if they changed one of the regulations. And we have it written, and we emailed it to everybody. I don't know if they printed it, or if you want a printed copy, or that we give to Wendy or whatever.
Thank you, Phyllis.
If we could share it up here so you could give them to
So did you want to make a motion? Did you want to amend the motion?
We want to...
So, did you want to amend the motion?
We would amend the motion to change section 125.11.6B7. I'm sorry. We would amend the motion to add 2 changes that they're required in 2 places in the proposed bylaw. what it does simply is return the requirement of having the limitation of the gross floor area, as well as the maximum square footage size.
And we're okay with the maximum square footage size being 950?
Cannot hear you, ma'am.
We're okay with the proposal changed by the planning board to change it from...
So I need your specific amendment. The specific amendment is what's highlighted.
Should I read the whole thing?
So I'm going to read what I believe your amendment is.
Yes.
Okay, you tell me. So I'm going to go change 125.11.6B7 by adding the red underlined text.
Correct.
So I'll read the whole chapter with the, I'll bring up what they wanted to look at. Protected use ADU, auxiliary dwelling unit, an attached, detached, or internal ADU that is located or is proposed to be located on a lot in a single-family residential zoning district and is not larger in gross floor area than, this is the amendment, half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or, this is now in this, not a part of the amendment, 950 square feet, amendment, whichever is smaller, and provided that only one ADU on a lot may qualify as a protected use ADU. An ADU that is non-conforming to zoning shall be still qualified as a protected use ADU if it otherwise meets this definition. So the amendment is half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or whichever is smaller, and.
Yes, sir.
That is correct.
Yes, that's part one. The same language is required in 127.
Speak into the mic.
I'm sorry.
I know.
The same information is required in section 125.11C6 2AI.
Yeah, I'm getting. I just want to go.
Yes, sir. Okay.
I want to go one at a time.
Yes.
So that first is all set.
Yes, sir.
So that's part of the amendment, and the amendment also includes change 125.11.6C-2-A-I by adding the following text, which is redlined up here. Protected use ADU shall not be larger than a gross floor area of 1/2 the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or whichever is smaller.
Yes.
So that's your amendment.
It begins with 1/2.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So we have an amendment on the floor that needs to be seconded. So we have a motion made. We have an amendment made and seconded. Now, discussion about the amendment. We're just talking about the amendment. Dana?
Dana Roscoe, South Main Street, member of the Planning Board. So the Planning Board is required to have a public hearing before it proposes any change to zoning bylaws. We held that public hearing back in January. Larry and Phyllis attended. The objection that they raised at that time was that a property owner could take a closet in their house and turn it into an ADU. The state law is actually very clear on defining the minimum requirements for an ADU. It must have a bedroom, it must have a separate kitchen, and it must have a separate bath. They initially asked us to require a minimum square footage of 350 square feet. We asked the Franklin Regional Council of Governments that was advising us on this, and FRCOG said that that was illegal. Phyllis and Larry don't believe that that's illegal. They said that the citation that the FRCOG was using was specific to one municipality. I honestly, the planning board really talked and met and considered this and could not find really a viable argument to favor this language and felt like what our intention was to make it easier for staff, and the fact that Leverett and Whately have not had a problem, I don't think is necessarily germane to Sunderland. So I would not be in favor of this.
Okay, so basically, now we need to address the moderator, and now we're into a maximum 2-minute response.
Mr. Moderator, may I respectfully say to Dana that may I respectfully say to Dana as we mischaracterized some bits of that meeting by a good deal. But in fact, the law that we quoted to him and the other town was dealing with is an Attorney General ruling. And it doesn't say you can't have a minimum ADU size. It says you can't have a minimum ADU size if you don't have a minimum size for buildings, for dwellings in town. Sunderland does not have a minimum size for dwelling in town, meaning it defaults to the state values, which is 150 square foot minimum.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Jordan. The minimum, when we said a closet. I'm sorry. Wow.
That's much better. At least we can hear.
Yeah. When we said a closet, we were talking about the state limit, which is 150 square feet for one room and 70 square feet for another. And we thought that was very small. But again, they can do that. Even if it's written the way it is, somebody can make it that small. That's part of the state law on it. And we're looking to have limits because ADUs are, I should be answering, yeah, right? We went to a public meeting, and the half that the phrase that we're putting back in was not addressed. They didn't even say there was no recording of the meeting. There wasn't a Zoom or anything like that. So we did bring up at the meeting the minimum sizes and all that kind of stuff. And basically, the only answer we got for dropping that phrase was to help administrative duties, and Granby has the same building inspector as Sunderland does. They're doing them in Granby, they're doing them in Hadley, they're doing them in Sunderland. There's, like we said, there's already 2 in Sunderland.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, Phyllis.
I'd like to spin around too. Doug Fulton, 140 North Main Street, and I'm also on the planning board. I just briefly do appreciate, Larry and Phyllis, your participation in the hearings and meetings. We really do. It's great. We're mostly lonely in the meetings. Anybody who's been on meetings knows how it goes. So having some further town participation is awesome. We did hear the concerns, and we actually talked about them, and we went beyond that. We asked FERCog if you could give us information about the distribution of the housing sizes in Sunderland. And it came back, because I think one of your main arguments, and I did hear it, is, you know, what I'd call a tail wagging the dog situation of the ADU being larger than the principal dwelling unit somehow. And that's one of the cases. I think the other case would be developers coming in, buying a lot and putting 2 small units on that lot while obeying all our other zoning laws. I think for the first case, I mean, again, FERCog came back, did the distribution. It's 2% or less in Sunderland that are up to 900 square feet currently. It's very few and far between in this town, so that's not really an issue for us. And I'm not a developer, but I think there's some in the room, or there were. I don't think if they're buying a lot in Sunderland and with our zoning laws and the frontage that you need to have, what they're putting in is effectively 2 ADUs or 2 900 or less square foot units. So for those problems that we don't see existing, then we're adding this administrative burden and trying to figure that and put that on our building inspector. And I personally think that we actually have about 30-some% of the homes in Sunderland that are 1,200 to 1,800 square who would then be prohibited down to that half of the square footage, while their neighbor who has a 2,000 square foot house wouldn't be in what they want to do with their ADU. And I think putting that burden on them isn't really equitable and what we want. And so I think in that situation, you know, what the state passed is something that has to work for 350 cities and towns in Massachusetts. Boston, I think, is excluded from that, but all of the other 350. So of course, it's not going to be exactly right for every town, which is why we made a couple of the changes the way we did. So I would also be opposed to the amendment. Thank you.
So at this time, Larry, we've been up a few times and talked, so basically for the moderator in town meeting to address it, it has to meet the corners of, they call it the 4 corners. The way it was presented, the amendment met the requirements for an amendment to be voted on by town meeting. So right now, we're going to vote specifically on the amendment. The amendment only has to pass by a majority vote. So we're voting on the amendment, and the amendment is adding the words half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or whichever is smaller, and that's under 125.11.6B7 and 125.11.6C2AI, adding the words after floor area of 1/2 the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or whichever is smaller. 950 square feet, whichever is smaller. Without seeing any other additional question cards, we are voting on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, green cards. All those opposed to the amendment, red cards. The moderator will declare that the amendment fails. Now we go back to, but that is in moderator and town meeting land, that's how an amendment should be offered. The discussion was great discussion by both parties of why we did it, the changes, and the questions of this. That was outstanding. So right now, the vote on the amendment fails. We are going to the Article 10, the original Article 10. All those in favor of Article 10, which is the original bet presented by the Planning Board, hold up your green cards. This is 2/3. All those opposed, red cards, declare it 2/3. Article passes. Article 11.
I motion we move Article 11.
Second. So this is the article that sets the revolving account limits for all of our town departments. Certain town departments need to be able to bring in fees and then spend those fees on expenses throughout the year, and so they have revolving accounts for them. The state requires us to set limits on those, and those are what are presented here.
Any conversation? Any questions? Without seeing any yellow cards? All those in favor of Article 11, raise your green cards. Opposed on Article 11, red cards. Declare it unanimous. Now, Articles 12 through 17 are what we call consent articles. This allows the town to do its normal business. So we take 12 through 17 as in unison. A motion?
I move Articles 12 through 17.
Second.
Any discussion on the consent articles? Without hearing or seeing any yellow cards, all those in favor of the consent articles? Opposed, red? Declare it unanimous. Now, Article 18 is a citizen's petition.
I motion we move Article 18.
Seconded.
And at this time, I'd like the citizen that put in the petition to speak on the petition.
Will Sillen, 34 South Main Street. I have a 3.5-minute read for the petition. Before that, I want to thank you all for coming and staying and hearing this. And I want to also reiterate appreciation to folks on the stage and those on the floor who have put all the time and work into being ready for tonight. Running a town government's pretty complicated. It's not getting any simpler. And I'm very grateful to have people like yourselves who spend a lot of time to help our town run. So thank you. With that said, this article is a bit of a criticism. So here I go. In 2018, annual town meeting authorized the select board to aggregate the electricity load of Sunderland residents and businesses and enter into agreements to purchase electric energy services independently or with other towns. It was expected that by aggregation and going through a competitive bidding process that the town would secure supplier rates lower than that offered by Eversource. It would also provide ratepayers town-approved options to purchase energy greener than that supplied by Eversource. The first three-year contract was secured in 2020. Not long after the ink dried on that contract, Eversource's rates increased substantially on into 2022. Assuming approximately 1,500 ratepayers in Sunderland, savings on average was about $800 per ratepayer. The program delivered beautifully as promised and was a silver lining during a very difficult period. All those involved, particularly members of the Select Board and the Energy Committee, deserve credit for making those savings possible. Now it's 2026. A recent decision by the Select Board was the catalyst to bring this article forward. Having an opportunity to default the ratepayers into an option more affordable than Eversource's current rate, the board voted to default the ratepayers into a more expensive option that further exceeded Massachusetts mandates for green energy. This is not town money that is being spent, and without some explicit authorization, it shouldn't be the Select Board's choice to increase and direct a private citizen's spending to fulfill a perceived public priority. The utility bills go to the individual ratepayer, and the bills are paid from each individual's bank account If expenses exceed an individual's ability to pay on time, Eversource doesn't send a note to the town. It's the individual ratepayer who is on the hook. I made a survey at the website of the Colonial Power Group, the vendor that provides the electricity supply options for towns participating in the municipal aggregation program. And there was a handout, you might have seen it on the way in. Of 10 towns, Sunderland and its 9 neighboring towns that work with Colonial Power Group, Sunderland currently has the most expensive default option. Sunderland also has the most expensive lowest cost option of those 10 towns. And finally, Sunderland is currently one of just 2 of those towns that defaults their ratepayers to an option other than the least expensive one available. The Select Board will benefit from this article should it pass or fail. If it passes, the Board has clear instructions by a vote directly from the floor of annual town meeting to default the ratepayers into the most affordable rate that meets the state mandates, and the more expensive energy mixes become the options. If the article fails, then the Select Board's decision to raise the Sunderland's rates will, by default, be affirmed at an annual town meeting. I submit that the Sunderland ratepayers should have the benefit of the lowest cost option that meets the state mandates for their electricity as the default, and the opportunity to spend more on greener options if that is their priority. I will be voting yes on this article. Thank you very much.
Any additional comments, questions? Okay, just so we go into it, Mr. Sillen and I talked before, and I limited Mr. Sillen to 3 minutes and 30 seconds, approximately. So any debate, I want to hold the same thing, 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Aaron?
Thank you. Aaron Falbo, 422 Amherst Road. I'm also a member of the Sunderland Energy Committee. I just wanted to point out that the handout that Mr. Sillen referred to has 10 towns listed. The actual aggregation consists of 16 towns, so there is some data missing that's in front of you, and I'm not sure that it holds that Sunderland is the most expensive. Let me go back to how the aggregation was created, why it was voted on the way it was. In 2019, in June, the Energy Committee conducted a survey in town. We didn't presume to know what residents wanted in terms of this aggregation. So we conducted a survey. This was now 7 years ago. I don't have the exact numbers, but I can tell you about 60% of the respondents of that survey said, we wanted the most renewable energy we could get at a price point at or below Eversource's price. A small handful of people said, we want the most renewable energy we could get regardless of the price. Another small handful said, we want the cheapest energy we can get regardless of the renewable content. So the greatest majority said, we want as much renewable energy as we can get, but at a reasonable price. And that's exactly what the Energy Committee has endeavored to do. When we adopted the aggregation program, I said at this body, at the town meeting, said, we do not control Eversource's price rate. They adjust their price every 6 months. The aggregation contract was typically 2 years or 3 years, providing price stability, which was also a beneficial feature. So during most of the aggregation years that we've been a part of this project, as Mr. Sillen pointed out, the price has been lower than Eversource's, and we saved the town's ratepayers over $2 million over the course of the aggregation, while also providing additional renewable energy. There have been points, and one of them was in the last 6 months, when Eversource's rate dipped below our aggregation rate. They happened to go out to bid. Eversource went out to bid at a time when the market was at a minimum. If they had gone out to bid even a couple of weeks later, they would have had to pay a much bigger price. They got very lucky. And at that point, we came to the select board to notify them and the residents of Sunderland that now the aggregation rate was higher than Eversource's rate. We gave them information how they could change their supplier back to Eversource if that's what they wanted to do. So in sum, the Energy Committee has been doing what we interpreted the people of this town wanted us to do. The mission of the Energy Committee itself is to guide the town toward a renewable energy future. If this petition were to pass, that would no longer be the case because the cheapest default would necessarily be the minimum renewable energy required by law. That's not what the Energy Committee is set up to do, and that's not what we interpret the will of the town to be. So that's why I would urge you to vote against this petition.
Thank you, Aaron. Are there any more comments?
I just want to add one thing, and Aaron kind of touched on this, but the aggregate rate is not the default rate for people who are in town on Eversource. You have to opt into it, and then you can also opt out of it at any time and opt back in, and opt back out, and opt back in. And so if Eversource does dip below the cost of the aggregate, you can switch to Eversource, and then it dips back up, and you can switch back to the aggregate. So it does give that flexibility there. So it's not a pure straight, you're locked in for some period of time, and if Eversource drops down below, you're losing money. You do have the ability to be able to switch back and forth between the two.
Mr. Sillen?
In answer to the handout, I don't know what towns are in the aggregate pool. I just took a map out and took the nearest towns to Sunderland, and not all of them are in Colonial's operating, bidding process. So I don't know what, I've seen 15 towns, 12 towns, 16 towns. These are the towns that just are around us. And so what I said might not be true for all the towns in the whatever we're aggregated with, but it is true for the nearest towns to us. In terms of sort of the priorities or the philosophy that I think is appropriate for the situation where the town is essentially managing a program for private citizens with their own money, regardless of the result of a survey, you still have a number of people who don't want to have been opted up to a higher rate. So if somebody's got, sets up and for years the town has defaulted to the lowest rate of those that were made available, then when you change the next year and you say you want to opt it up to, you're going to use a higher rate, you're going to use that more aggressive green rate, the people have to pay attention to this and opt back down again. The way it should work when you're spending private people's money is just like the public bidding process. If it meets state requirements, you take the lowest bid. So the idea should be, in my opinion, that if the town is going to have this program where people have been co-opted into it, take the lowest bid. And I think Aaron could have the other options be very aggressive, very green, and if he's right, people will opt to those options. People shouldn't be forced to opt down to save money, that's all. If you want to spend money, it's an option to go up. You don't force people to have to opt down to save money. And a lot of people don't even know about the program. And there's people who are very busy. They're getting down toward the finish line, and they've only got a certain amount of money. They don't have time to follow what's going on with the energy program, but they got to pay the bills. And they're trying to get to the finish line with having a little bit left. So those are the people, too, to think about. They're not even aware of a poll. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sillen. Okay. So one of the questions you'll notice in the article, it says move that the vote, and it talks about that this is a non-binding resolution. It's non-binding because although the town meeting is a legislative body, the legislative body cannot tell the select board what to do, but it can make recommendations. So that's why it says non-binding. All right. All those that are in favor of the citizens' petition, please raise your green cards. All those opposed, raise your red cards. The moderator declares the no vote carries the motion, so it's voted no. At this time, the town clerk has some very important words of wisdom for us all.
I move the meeting adjourn to meet to the polling place in the community room at the Sunderland Public Library, 20 School Street in Sunderland, on Saturday, the 2nd day of May, 2026, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. to act on the following. The elected offices: Assessor, 1 for 3 years; Select Board, 1 for 3 years; Board of Health, 1 for 3 years; Library Trustee, 3 for 3 years; Moderator, 1 for 1 year; Planning Board, 1 for 5 years; Riverside Cemetery Trustee, 1 for 3 years; Sunderland Elementary School Committee, 2 for 3 years; and Frontier Regional School, 1 for 3 years. Question 1, shall the town of Sunderland be allowed to assess an additional $800,000 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the operating budgets of the town and the public schools for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2026? And upon closure of the polls, to dissolve the meeting.
Seconded.
So that's a motion. We have it, motion made.
Seconded.
I did.
And seconded.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion about going home? Okay. All those that want to dissolve after the town election next Saturday, raise your green cards. Opposed? You almost got that red card up, didn't you? Declare it unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Great discussion.
Thank you so much, everybody.